here we go. What's up, everybody? Tyrone Wilson here. It is June 27th, National PTSD Awareness Day. I want to thank you all for joining me today. It is a significant day to me because, as you may or may not know, I disclosed my PTSD diagnosis on national TV. So, of course, I had to represent for today. I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to talk about some of the things that I have gone through with friends, with family, and then later on, I'll have some guests on. If at any point you want to chime in into the conversation, let us know some of the things that may or may not, some of the things that may have happened to you. I do understand it may be triggering. I do understand it may not be easy for you, but if you do, we will applaud it all. All right, so National PTSD Awareness Day started back in 2010, right? It was in recognition of a staff sergeant named Joe Beal in the National Guard who died by suicide in 2007. And you may have seen a lot of I don't want to call them promotions, but articles, uh, movements for soldiers. And I just want you all to know that it's PTSD is not just about soldiers going to war and being affected by you know things that are uh, what's the what's what I'm looking for, things that are not normal. Well, I wanted to let you know that it's not just about soldiers. I have family members that have seen a lot more death than I have, and I've been deployed twice. And some of these family members aren't even teenagers yet. So, it could be more than just soldiers. So, a little bit about my story and how I think my PTSD began. If I was to go back, I would say it may have started from a child. PTSD, anxiety. As a child growing up, I went to a school that was predominantly white. At the time, there were a lot of Cambodians in my class, and every morning they used to fight every day, every morning before school, after school. So when you start to see fights all the time as a kid, you start to see blood, injuries all the time, it weighs on you. But before I even get too deep into that, I want to talk about the PTSD for a little bit and just let you know that if this is something that you feel like is affecting you, that's totally fine. It's okay to not be okay. PTSD is just something that, it has an effect on you based off of a previous experience or multiple experiences. And if you're a human, then chances are you've experienced things in life. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's all about your ability to recognize it and your ability to push through it, work through it, live through it, however you want to categorize it. So, back to my story, there were some things that I have seen as a kid, but the majority of it took place during my deployment. And in these countries that I was in, there were situations that have happened to where I'm being mortared. I'm hearing rocket attacks. I'm responding to sirens. I'm in Blackhawks, in Chinook helicopters every other Friday. I can see people on the ground. I'm traveling back and forth. I'm going outside the gate, outside the wire. And by no means am I trying to compete with other soldiers that were out there. I'm just talking about my story. And, my story, of course, is relative to me. And I'm sure, there are soldiers with a lot more harsher stories, harsher conditions that I was in, and they may have been able to handle it a lot better, but everyone is different. So it's not a condition to where it makes me violent or it makes me want to become physical. It's just oftentimes I can feel myself reacting to situations a lot different than everyone else. I can literally feel myself behaving differently. My movements are different, a lot of twitching here and there. And I can talk about some of the most recent experiences that made me feel that way. Oftentimes, it involves crowds and groups and situations to where I don't really have a lot of control and I don't have a lot of freedom to move. And it's because I've been in situations where um, I am in a similar situation and I don't know the outcome. I just know that I have a weapon on me, I have a lot of rounds on me, and I have no idea uh, the intent of a lot of the people that were around me. Going through a situation like that once or twice, maybe you're able to brush it off, but going through those situations dozens of times, maybe even more, it could have a different effect on you. So, what I've been able to do recently, um, as recent as I'd say maybe 2.5 years ago, I openly admitted publicly to being diagnosed with PTSD. VA rating 70%, but I go back and forth as to whether that should be higher or whether that should be lower. I have good days and I have bad situations that will throw me off for a little while, maybe a day or two, oftentimes a lot more. So some of those situations, as I mentioned, would be situations like in a crowd, and they affect me because I have family, I have friends, I have a daughter, and we may be in a situation to where we're in a crowd and they are enjoying themselves. And I'm trying my best to enjoy myself as well. And it becomes increasingly difficult to make that happen. So, what I've been trying to do is I've been trying to develop some type of coping mechanism to where I can clearly recognize that this current situation is going to have an effect on me. So what I do is I try to, you know, take a deep breath, realize that I am in the moment, and then I often try to not go into it with my own personal perspective, but from my family's perspective or from my daughter's perspective that we're just there to have fun. Oftentimes, people are just oblivious to the possibilities of what could happen. And I don't want to be pessimistic about life. I just understand that, you know, these situations do exist. So I have to take it into consideration only because I am aware of such situations. And it's getting a little bit better. And one of the reasons why it's getting a little bit better is because I started to have these conversations with my family, started to talk to them a little bit more about what PTSD is, how it affects me, and how some of the things that you see from me during these moments is not me being weird. It's not me being scared. It's not me, acting funny or creepy like they call it sometimes. Ty, you get that creepy look going on. It's the PTSD kicking in. So now that they have a better understanding of it all, um, I'm anxious to see where it goes. Just recently I had a situation where I was out with my brother and I couldn't get comfortable. It was just a lot of people. I couldn't find a seat. I couldn't get comfortable because of the music. And then I just started to clam up a little bit. I started to get a little bit paranoid. I started to feel like everyone was looking at me, and that's pretty normal for how the PTSD affects me. But it's gotten to a point to where I can recognize that early, and in that situation, I just let them know what was going on and said, I'm just not comfortable, but I don't want to ruin anyone else's night. So I'm just going to go and sit over here. And that's what I did. I found a comfortable spot where I could sit, I could have a drink, and I just kind of let them enjoy themselves. I try not to be a burden saying that we need to go to this type of place or this establishment or have this type of food, or I need to even sit with my my face to the door. I don't even think I need to do that anymore. And it's getting a little bit better. Another situation that made me think is that, I've had some family members over this last weekend. And, we're down here in West Palm Beach. And there was a conversation that was had with one of the little kids and one of my older cousins um, that kind of hit home a little bit. And the conversation was about uh, the t-shirts that my cousin was wearing. And the t-shirts are just in memory of, another family member that had passed away. So it was just a bunch of different pictures of him on the t-shirt. And this little kid, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, said, how come you didn't put pictures of me on the t-shirt? And it wasn't bad that they were having the conversation. It was just how nonchalant the conversation was with the kid. And then I started to think, and I was like, just in this last 6 months alone, that kid's probably been aware of at least 5 deaths in the family, and has been to at least 3 or 4 funerals. And I can't imagine how it affects them. I also think about some of my cousins that are a little bit older who've had multiple siblings pass away through violence, um, tons of friends pass away through violence, and some of the things that they have seen, some of the things that they have described with with their friends, those are things that me myself have not seen. A lot of soldiers that I know have not seen, even though we're supposed to be prepared for it all. So what I'm hoping is that maybe kids that are in a similar situation can see this type of conversation that we're having, and they can know that we are aware of them. We are aware that they are in need of help, even though, a lot of people may not think so. Um, I do not think that that's natural to be around so much violence. I do believe that at a national level, something needs to be done to address a lot of these kids that have witnessed violent situations, because the PTSD starts at an early age and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Um, D, thanks for joining. D says, in truth, a lot of people have not gone to war unknowingly are experiencing PTSD. High crime areas house many people experiencing PTSD. A person has experienced abuse, medical trauma, etc. Yes, that is a very good point. So if I was to start backwards with the abuse, I did have uh, a talk with two really good friends, Cameo and Sabrina Soul, about domestic violence. So if you want to see that talk, it was very, very powerful to hear some of the things that they have experienced. So that is on the channel. Take a look at that when you get a chance. The medical trauma, um, I'm not sure that I can call it medical trauma, but I have experienced anxiety attacks in the past. And yeah, just this last weekend, I started to get the anxiety back again. And for me, when it comes to the medical, the physical, cardiovascular, I start to get a tightness in my chest. And if that's something that you've never experienced before, you could start to think that there's something wrong with you. Maybe your heart is starting to fail. The very first time it happened to me, there was tremoring all through my chest, and different vibrations, and I honestly thought like I'm gonna die. And when you start thinking that, when you've experienced that multiple times, it starts to bring your anxiety and your PTSD back. Um, so what I have gotten better at is recognizing that that's what it is. Um, Trying to tell myself that there's nothing wrong with me, convincing myself that there's nothing wrong with me. And I recently learned some breathing exercises that allow me to stretch out my chest, and the pain goes away rather quickly. But in those situations, if you don't know about that, then I can understand why you may feel like it's a lot worse than what it really is. Jay Blake, this is a good point. Uh, Jay Blake says watching the killing of George Floyd messed with her. As Black people, we all have some form of PTSD, sadly. Yes, that's true. I wanted to get into triggers a little bit later, but since you posted it, there are some things that may trigger your PTSD, and that's okay. The George Floyd thing got to me as well. In addition to George Floyd, it was a time where I was living in DC. So the marches, the president leaving the White House, um, the shootings that they would show all the time, um, the beatings that they would show all the time, a lot of that was getting to me on top of dealing with COVID, thinking that death is right outside. Um, for me, the COVID putting on the mask was a reminder that death is a possibility. So the even putting on the mask and riding in the Uber would give me anxiety. So the highlight of the ride was actually taking the mask off. So I definitely remember that. Um, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything from Dee's comment because I was working my way backwards. Yeah. So the next step after the medical piece was um, people that are experiencing situations that cause PTSD but may not know that it's PTSD, typically violence, things that are going on in the home, things that are going on at their schools that they may be aware of, students being violent, students bringing in weapons, students bringing in drugs, students um, passing away because of drugs, or any one of those situations. And even hearing about shootings in a local area or shootings that just involve kids, high schools, junior high, like it is a lot that is going on in this world. And because that information is so accessible, just reading a tweet about it can trigger PTSD. So for me, and D, I like your comment about therapy helping, breathing exercises helping, and the one that I do is it's kind of like you treat it like a square. So you breathe in, hold it, exhale, then come back to the start, breathe in. So it's like breathe in, hold your breath, exhale, hold your breath, I'll breathe out, something like that. But yeah, that's what helps. When it comes to the therapy, I believe the very first thing that we would need to do is recognize that you may be experiencing symptoms of PTSD, and knowing that that's okay, and knowing that you do not have to run from that, because chances are there's other members of your friend group, other members of your family that are also experiencing PTSD, but the triggers would be different and the effects would be different. But I encourage you all to talk about those things with your family, because I think that it can help in multiple ways. One, you could understand what their triggers are, and it would help you stay ahead of their triggers. And because you're ahead of that and you recognize it, there's ways that you can adjust without making it known that you know that things are affecting them. For example, a thing that my brother does is my brother would be like, yo, let's get out of here and go check out a new place. I don't like this place. And he would take the heat for it being a bad place because he knows that it's starting to affect me. Another situation I was in recently was at the gym, and the dude next to me in the gym was yelling and throwing the weights and stuff and dropping the weights. And I've been at a gym, people drop weights all the time, but this dude was really, really extra with it. And I had to tell my brother, I was like, yo, I think my PTSD is kicking in, because this dude is right here. If he does one more thing, I'm gonna have to go say something. And he did it. And I went over there and I told a little joke and I was like, yo, man, you throwing these weights is making my PTSD kick in. Ha 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 ha. He's like, oh, my bad. I'm sorry. So, yeah. So after you recognizing what your family members' triggers are, your family members and friends will also be aware of what your triggers are. And it'll just be this one big, giant, cohesive group where we're all helping each other, and not saying that the PTSD will go away, but it'll help you live with it. Or I don't like to use the word cope, but yes, it will definitely help you cope with PTSD and your PTSD symptoms. If you're in the audience and you understand what one of your triggers are, and you would like to list what a trigger is, I think that would be really helpful. And then also list how you uh, identify that it is triggering and what you do about it. I listed mine, um, and I'll talk about another thing once again. What I try to do is I understand that things are affecting me. I wear my Apple Watch because my Apple Watch will also tell me when my blood pressure is starting to rise. My blood pressure is starting to rise, and I know that I'm not doing anything, then that's a clear sign that I'm becoming anxious, and there are things that I'm either thinking about or worried about that I feel like I can't change. So what I start to do is I start to think about what is on my mind currently. What is on my mind? And as I go through that list, I start to think about what are some of those things that are on my mind that I'm absolutely unable to change. And if I'm unable to change that thing, then I say to myself, there's nothing that we can do about that. Yes, this happened. Yes, it may affect me and I'm worried about it. Yes, I'm thinking that it may affect my friends and my family, but this already happened. So let's try our best to move on. Um, an example of that, and I know it can be difficult, an example of that for me was the election. The election gave me a lot of anxiety. And, believe it or not, I literally felt the anxiety go away as we started to get the results of the election. Dee again says, she's found that the family really doesn't comprehend, and the therapist was like my best friend, and my family prefers surface exchange rather than going deep. So I can totally understand that. Um, for me, because it's been so long, I left when I was 18. I had a feeling that, my family had an idea that some things may have affected me, but they probably didn't know exactly what. So more and more, I've been sitting them down and explaining to them some of the things that I've witnessed, some of the things that I've experienced, how that affected me, but without triggering them as well, right? I try not to get too graphic with it. With that being said, I got one of my really, really good friends about to join us right now, Jay Brown. What's good? What's good,
Hey,
Jay?
what's good, homie?
Chilling, man. Let me get this one comment up of Miss D. Miss D says, my sister in killings of unarmed black men. Right now, I'm avoiding bringing the husband to events or watch my husband. Therapy also helps. Yeah. Um, really, really good points. One of the things, one thing real quick that I want to mention about that is I have a little bit of understanding about propaganda, and I understand that there may be certain times where the videos are being shown for a reason. Um, you may start to notice a lull in these violent videos. You may start to notice an uptick in these violent videos. And for me personally, I think that is for a reason. I also believe that ultimately they would like us to be subconsciously inferior or subconsciously afraid. And for me, I refuse to teach my children to be afraid. I teach them to be aware, but I don't want them walking around automatically thinking that they should be afraid or automatically thinking that someone else has more, uh, what's the word I'm looking for, more power and more privilege and rights than they do. I don't want my family members walking around being subconsciously inferior. Whew, all right. My man Jay Brown, fellow
Hey, man.
soldier, today is National PTSD Awareness Day. First question. Well, introduce yourself and then let us know what PTSD awareness means to you.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jay Brown, one of Ty's homies. Sorry for joining late and probably won't be able to stay on too long, but I've known Ty for a long time. We have a lot of real conversations. Anytime I get a chance to support, I do. And PTSD Awareness Day. It's one of those things that I think when people talk about PTSD, automatically they think about the military, they think about combat, they think about those kinds of things. And, to the point that, that you were just making about, violent videos, some of these other things, we experience trauma all the time, especially Black folks experience trauma. And, one of the things that immediately comes to mind for me is just went on a vacation with family, and one of my young nephews, he's 13. We had a men's session, with the family, all of the uh, you know boys and men, ages 13 and up, had a conversation, and one of the things that he talked about was, losing his uncle, someone that was close to him that died from gun violence, and you could see him holding back a lot of the emotion. And I was trying to express to him that that this is not normal, right? This is trauma, and you should expect that this is difficult to deal with, especially at the age that you are. And so for PTSD Awareness Day, it's getting outside of just that combat context and understanding that there are people going through all kinds of trauma, that this is a day to actually talk about what does that mean, and what does that look like outside of the lives of people that we expect to be having traumatic experiences, soldiers, policemen, these kinds of things. What was clear to me is that we don't talk enough about it. And him in his little 13-year-old frame trying to reconcile what all of this means, and how it's affecting him. This is a day to kind of call those things out.
Indeed, indeed. That is a good point you mentioned about it not just affecting soldiers. One of my guests was going to be a firefighter, actually Swayze from the show. Um, I was in talks with him about coming on. My sister is a 911 operator and has the calls every day. She doesn't get to have that closure. A lot of her calls are in of violent nature. She's been doing that for 20 years. And some of the ways that I see her PTSD affecting the rest of the family is that she moves in a way that, is always safety first, always precautions, always, conversations about having a landline or turning your location on or things like that. So I could see how that affects her. Um, if there was another one, my brother was on, and there's he was in the NFL, so a lot of his colleagues are suffering from brain injuries, the PTSD of the medical injuries and how that affects their life. And I can only imagine what watching games could be like for them now. When they see injuries such as who was recent from the Buffalo Bills, Hamlin from the Bills, where he literally, I mean, technically he passed away on the field, right? I don't know if they wanted to confirm that, but I'm sure that's what cardiac arrest means, you know. But he's doing a lot better now. But I always think about how that would affect a lot of people should that incident have gone in a different direction. How would it even have affected the fans and the industry, as a whole, to know that that is a possibility, and just living knowing that that could be a possibility uh, could raise the anxiety levels. So another question that I was asking was, do you understand what your triggers are, and how do you adjust to being triggered?
Yeah, that's a doozy, man. The level of awareness that you have to even you know be able to call those things out within yourself. Um, I recently started talking to a therapist, kind of in line with my my military time. And one of the things that to the point that you made about Alicia kind of moving into safety first and kind of thinking about things. Um, I was in basic training during September 11th, and you know for a lot of people, the military before September 11th was for play, right? It was to get college money. It was, to make a way. And, when it happened, that day we had, regular training, and that at a certain point, the day was different than every other day. And they, took us into a room. They showed us, on a TV, the planes flying into the towers, and,
Hmm.
you know, told us point blank, it would behoove you to pay attention to what we're teaching you, because you're going to use it.
Hmm.
And I didn't realize the effect that that had on me, right? Being in uniform and realizing that this is different, right? And that this world that always seems, so safe, it's not. And I've kind of carried with me between that, teaching martial arts and teaching different things, that I move in the same way that kind of Alicia does, with the safety first, always being mindful, right? And that carries with it a certain level of stress that people don't necessarily uh, take to heart and understand. So, talking about triggers, um, my head is constantly on a swivel, and I see stuff all the time that I'm like, oh, okay, let me perk up, right? Let me watch, right? Triggers like I don't sit with my back to doors, right? In public places, those kinds of things, they're triggers, and all of that stress, adds up. So absolutely.
Um, a big one for me is when I'm in situations or I'm places where I know the crowd, this crowd right here is more prone to, and this is me saying it, nice. This crowd right here is a lot more prone to violence than the crowd I was in 3 days ago, you know? And sometimes you see things, like, you know what people look like when they're carrying, right? You do know that, the bouncer didn't search nobody at the door, so you start to notice these little things, and you notice that the drinks that they're handing out, they're using glassware, or they're not putting the Coronas in the cup. You know, you start to notice these little things, and you're like, okay, okay, so this is this is what it's gonna be like tonight. You know, so yeah, uh, that happened to me. Matter of fact, that happened to me last summer, and it was really bad because they everyone felt like I was just uncomfortable being in there, amongst the people, and I'm like, no, it's not the people. I love the people. It's just I have an understanding of how it can go down in here, and then for some reason, you know, I follow a few Twitter accounts that actually post these events and these videos for views and for clicks and for entertainment, not understanding the effect that it could have on people. So, which is why I tried to create a platform that's of the opposite of that. Y'all will hear about that at some point soon. But yeah, so another question is when do you feel like you first recognized that you were being triggered with PTSD and you felt like you had to talk about it?
That's I'll be completely honest. It wasn't until I started doing uh, my VA paperwork that I really started to think about it, addressing some of that stuff. And I know therapy is good. I know pretty much everybody needs therapy. There's something that they need to talk about, but it was just never something that necessarily, I didn't have an event, a trigger, anything like that made me, say, okay, I need to talk about something. I very much, I think I'm, typical black man, right? So much stuff comes at you in life. Like if you want to talk about everything, you ain't gonna do nothing else. So, I think I was very much one of those people that just internalized a lot of stuff. Um, and so yeah, it's, I don't know if I have a particular moment, uh, but again, death by a thousand cuts. Those things happen all the time. The things that we just talked about. So um, probably should have done it sooner.
Yeah, good point. Um, I want to say that that was the very first time it came to fruition for me. I had an epiphany because I went to go do the paperwork myself, And we got, at one point you get to the psychiatrist that's going to evaluate you. And from the very first question, I lost it. And he was like, "So, how you doing?" And for the first time, I really took a moment to assess how I was really doing. And I just let it all out because I realized that subconsciously I've been coping with a lot of things that I just never let out, that I never talked about, because one, I felt like no one's going to be able to understand it, one. Um, and then two, they wouldn't be able to comprehend, what I was saying as I was saying it. And from that moment on, like I kind of let loose on everything that was going on. There was just huge, giant weight off my shoulders, and I got a lot more comfortable discussing it. And his advice was, you've been able to see behind the curtain. I would find some of your friends that have also been able to see behind the curtain and have a lot more of these conversations with them. But
You
then,
know, it. Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was going to
No,
say,
go.
and I was going to say, you know, my other people have seen behind the curtain. It's just that their curtain is a little bit different than mine. That's all.
So, I was gonna say, I'm also a life coach, right? Life coach, and career coach. And one of the things that you learn, on the path of becoming a coach, is really to, communicate fully with people. And one of the first things that we do in a session is we ask people, "How are you?" And we, we look for a real answer. And the first time that we kind of talked about that, in the training and things that I was doing leading up to it, the realization I had was, how often does someone ask you, "How are you?" and really expect an answer, right? Oftentimes, people, "Hey, how are
He's
you
like, I'm
doing? How's
good.
things going?" Yeah, I'm good. What I'm
I'm
saying,
good.
or if things aren't great, people are like, "Oh, I'm okay," right?
You should
Um,
be.
and exactly, and it's, doing that level three listening, taking in body language, taking in, intonation, taking in all of those things to say, okay, like there's something going on, there's something bothering you, like talk about it, right? And while coaching is not therapy, it's not until, oftentimes for a lot of people, they have that kind of a engagement, that is more of a professional engagement with a coach, with a therapist, with a psychologist, that someone is asking them, "How are you?" and they're expecting a real answer. Um, Most people are used to the, "Yeah, I'm good," and you continue on with the conversation.
Yeah, I used to kind of chuckle about that because of everything that's going on in my life right now. Um, I would always be okay until someone asks me, "What's good? How you doing?" And then what I started doing was being real about how I'm feeling and being like, "Yo, I was good. I was really maintaining until you asked me how I'm doing." And now I realize I'm really not doing as well as I think. So even like if I was to do an interview or something, like I like to start with that question, like, how you doing? um Hopefully, people really, you know take a moment, take a step back and really assess how they're really doing. And I'll tell you, man, a lot of people just not doing well. It's just not doing well. um I had a conversation with my brother, and basically we were talking about, you know a way to explain it to people is to describe life being like having a lot of internet browsers open just at the same time, but not realizing that you do. And you're walking through life with all of these different situations and moments and things that you're thinking about and things that you're trying to handle. And every day you're just opening up these new browsers, doing these searches, not knowing that you're forgetting to close some of these loops. And eventually, you run out of memory, you run out of processing power, and you crash, and you lash out and you get violent. And a lot of people may not know why. And it's because, you've been carrying a lot of burden when you really didn't have to. Maybe, you can't really find an outlet or a friend or someone that will understand. But, you know, having that outlet is crucial.
It is, and I love that analogy. Especially with us being techies too, right?
Mhm.
Because it just
Yeah.
it's so apropos. But unless you take some time to close those windows, right? Just like you
Mhm.
said, you don't even realize that you're running slow, right? Or
Yeah.
that or some of these things aren't loading,
Yeah.
right, the way that they
Yeah.
need to,
You'd be
right?
like, I'm good. I got that new AMD chip. We could
Right,
process we could process a lot.
right.
you know. Let me get some of these through some of these comments. Jay Blake was talking about how the flight kicks in and having to change the station or leave places when violence is going on. That's you know, from what I understand, like that, this whole anxiety, PTSD is essentially a survival mechanism. I learned that the tightening of the chest is literally my body telling me that there's some things that I'm stressing about that I don't have to stress about. But we're okay. So just recognizing that and reacting to that is not a bad thing at all. And I'm glad that you're able to see that.
I was,
Oh, uh-huh.
I commend her for actually listening to it.
Hmm.
Oftentimes we don't listen to our body, right?
Hmm.
And um, that flight is self-preservation. That's what it is.
Hmm.
I had the same kind of thing, kind of, at the culmination of all of the public killings of black people, at the hands of police. I had to stop after, um, you know, just I couldn't even watch it anymore. They were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, there's another." I can't do it. I
Hmm.
can't do it. I'm not gonna watch the video. Like I can't do it.
Yeah. 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 Especially there was one that I felt like it was a ritual one. Um, and it was with the lady on the highway. And it was like three other officers with her. And it seemed like she didn't want to do it, you know, but it seemed like they literally escorted her to the guy. And then everything happened. And that was one of the ones that got me because I do feel like that one really should have been different. Um, this is a good point. I do feel like what Dee is saying here that men are a lot worse, at introspection. I also feel like we try to be really, really macho. Of course, I'm not in the locker rooms with the ladies, so I'm not sure what type of conversations that they're having. But it's one rare that we can even get a bunch of the fellas together, and then two, by the time we start to talk about this, it's normally like at the end of the night after we talked about family, what we're doing, business, making moves, and all that stuff. But I will say, like, we're not our friend group. We're not opposed to having these conversations at all.
I would say not only are we not opposed, we are aware of Dee's point. Exactly, she's exactly right. And because we are aware of that, we go extra to check on each other, right? And we talk about it all the time with the friend group that we have. That we didn't realize how much support we actually needed until we had it. And it's a level of connection that a lot of people unfortunately don't really have. And I think it's one of those things that you don't realize you're missing until you have it.
Yeah. Sabrina had a question that I almost addressed this weekend. Has dating been difficult having PTSD?
I mean, you ain't got kicked off any more shows because of it. So
what can I say? I'll be real here. I had a moment in a recent relationship where a PTSD came out. You know, it came out, and it wasn't. Yes, it was a situation where there was a disagreement, and we were going back and forth, but I didn't become violent. Kind of, I just kind of like, just kind of stood still in place, and I said, I'm at this moment where I don't know what to do and I don't know what to say. So I kind of like clammed up because my anxiety, my paranoia, like everything was kicking in about how she's going to how she's going to perceive this and everything. And in that moment, I let her know. I was like, people have their vices. Some people cheat. Some people are violent. You know, some people can't lay off of the cakes. This happens to be mine. When I get into this really, really high emotional state, I will try my best to recognize it and bring it back down. But when I can't, this is what happens, and I don't know how that affected her, but things have been different after that. If I had to recall other times where I probably didn't know it was the PTSD, it was when, I don't know, I had this thing with like punching stuff. Like I would punch a stop sign or I would punch a door and stuff. And that's what made me realize, like, yo, this PTSD thing is real. Like I've never been violent towards another person, but realizing that not having control of my anger to where I want to get physical with something is an issue. This weekend, when I was in that uncomfortable position that I had talked about earlier, we were actually in a club, and my brother calls it the creepy look, that I get when I'm in the club. Um, but it's because, one, I can't see that well. I'm always trying to analyze everything that I do see if I can see it. I'm colorblind too, and then I just don't do well with crowds. So it may actually look like, I'm being creepy or I'm staring, but I'm not. And I noticed that happening just this last week going to the gym every day, because the new gym that I go to is really, really crowded, you know, and you can't look everywhere you look, you're going to see someone. And of course, you're paying attention to who's where. And sometimes I would catch them seeing me see them, and I'd be like, damn, they caught me looking. So this is what's going on in my head. So now, the paranoia kicks in, and I'm like, man, am I being that creep? Like, what do my eyes look like right now? Am I staring? Then I start to doubt myself. Like, was I really staring for like 20 seconds and didn't know I was staring for 20 seconds? You know? And then it gets kind of bad. So when it comes to the dating, I try to let that out early, but with a little bit of softness that some PTSD is there. So if you see me being, making it, so if it looks like I have a wandering eye and stuff, I'm not looking at other women. I just, for some reason, need to be aware of my surroundings. So that's something that I would say in a conversation early. But I don't even know what dating looks like or feels like. It's been it's been a while.
It's funny that you mention it, like
Hmm.
relationship PTSD and like the interaction
Hmm.
between uh, significant others. I think I suffered from kind of some of that fight or flight kind of uh, response as well when it came to emotions. Right? You talked about anger. Right? You could absolutely express anger. Right? And you
Uh-huh.
punch a sign, punch whatever.
Hmm.
For me, I never really had a physical manifestation
Hmm.
of anger or anything like that. But what I would often do in relationships, a lot of the failed relationships that I had, I would shut down,
Hmm.
right? When, and I think a lot of that came from, a particular relationship where I got hurt really badly. And so the response to that was, well, I'm not going to let myself feel the way that, feel as deeply as maybe I would, right? And so, when, things would come up, it's real easy to just, shut down and cut off. All right, well, this ain't working, right?
Hmm.
And maybe that's not what you want really and truly deep down.
Yeah.
But in order to avoid the hurt, in order to avoid going back to that place of trauma, you shut down. And I
Yeah.
think men particularly suffer from that when it comes to relationships. A lot of men have relationship PTSD and don't even recognize that it affects how they interact.
Yeah. I'm happy you said that because this is actually a follow-up to a follow-up question that I'll put on there. And when it comes to the relationship PTSD, some of the things that I have talked about before was, I have been in relationships where it was, you know, uh, I don't want to call it domestic violence, or was pretty more close to emotional violence, to where, I'm with someone that would say things to me when she was upset, and I had to try to differentiate, is this her, or is this, um, this illness kicking in? And it was really, really tough because it was 5 years of this. So I do have uh, relationship PTSD. And the question was, do I find it easier to be with a person that understands methods to soothe the PTSD? And have I ever met that person? What I can tell you is that I really do recognize the opposite of that. You know, um, if I feel like the person is volatile, if I feel like the person may pop off at any moment, if I feel like I could lose control of the situation, or she won't listen to me in any environment, um, I can't do it. You know, I'm not going to get loud in public. I'm not going to cause a scene in public. Like, I will literally get up, pay for the bill if there's a bill, and walk off. I just, I can't do it. So yes, I would prefer someone that understands that, but I also don't want them to feel like, I need coddling. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. I don't need them to be so aware that they think that that I'm unable to have difficult conversations or unable to have difficult interactions. But I do need them to understand that there may be a moment to where it becomes too much, but if it gets to that point, I'll just let them know. Be like, hey, like, this is a lot. I need a moment. Can we come back to this? So yeah. And sometimes I feel like I can subconsciously feel, a person being aware of that. Um, so yeah, I guess in short, yes. Have I ever met that person? That there are a few people that are aware and kind of coddle to that, and I can feel myself gravitate towards that. So yeah.
I would I would say, my wife is that person, right?
Mhm,
Because I was still not in a completely healed space when I met her.
mhm,
And so she knows a lot of kind of, relationship wise, kind of what I went through, what things do kind of trigger me from a relationship aspect.
mhm,
Um, and talking about meeting that person, I think, anyone that makes it to a point of, trust, and you having, you trusting that person and you being able to be vulnerable with that person.
mhm,
Because I think a lot of the things that we're talking about, whether it's lashing out, yelling, violence, shutting down, whatever it is, those are all defense mechanisms, right?
mhm.
That's that fight or flight kicking in. And so, trust ends up, I think, becoming one of those kind of primary
Yeah,
things that has to be present in order for that soothing to take place, right?
yeah. Just being able to open up, and let them know that, there may be a moment to where you may see some things for me that you probably had a thought was there, but it's not the same until you see it. You know, you know what I'm saying? It's hard to describe, but I definitely know the moment where the effects of my PTSD came out in the relationship. Whew. Oh man, yeah, this is good. We have another guest in the house, everyone. I want to make sure that we did address all the questions, the comments. Um, Mimi, I did get your questions about your comment about the crowds. Another round. Jay, yes, definitely take your behind to the gym. And I believe I addressed all of the rest. So there was a question, how was the response from fans and watchers of the show to you speaking about having PTSD? Oh, we had a Jay Sean Durham, and when he comes back, we lost him when he comes back. Uh, when he comes back, we'll bring him on.
Hey,
That is a
this is
really,
it. I was
huh?
just gonna say this is a good time for me to tag out with the homie, even though I
Okay.
didn't get a chance to rap with him. We still need to hook up for a cigar, all of us.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for
Um,
sure, for sure.
we got to jump on a plane now for you to do that, but we'll figure it out.
I will be in DC next Thursday,
Oh,
next weekend. Not this
oh,
weekend, next weekend,
all right, let's lock it in.
for sure.
Hey, as always, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do with all of this. It comes from a place of love and vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Not enough people do it, so my hats off to you, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Talk to you soon,
Absolutely.
man.
All
Yeah.
right, y'all.
With that, I'm gonna bring up uh, the homie Jay Sean Durham. Let me. You're muted. We can't hear you. You can't hear me. I think it's you. All right. So there was a question. How was the response from fans and watchers of the show to you speaking about PTSD? Uh, I got to be honest about this. This is a question. Nope, still muted, Sean. This is uh, I don't think I've ever, maybe once or twice, I've mentioned it publicly, but there was a moment during the show where I had an anxiety attack. And if you follow my tweets or do a search for my tweets and anxiety attack, it'll show the exact day that I had the anxiety attack, and I can tell you what caused it. So it was the day after the date. It was a day after the date with Kerry, and I started reading the comments, and it started making me question my own reality. You know, and people were in the comments saying, that I'm on the spectrum, saying that I'm violent, saying that, all of the negative things that you can say, people were saying. Um, they weren't making me look good, um, because they would screenshot like the one split second to where I'm looking crazy. And I remember one post saying, "Here's Tyrone having his weekly extra existential crisis or whatever." And my sister came to pick me up. She came to drop something off at the house or something, and she was like, "What's wrong?" And I just started to explain, and I lost my breath. And she was like, "What's going on?" And then I had to ask her, and I probably shouldn't say it like this, but this would be an open and real. This is what I asked her. I said, "Am I retarded?" That's how bad. That's how bad I was questioning my life and my reality. Because with my paranoia, with some of the things that go on in my mind, sometimes I do feel like I'm living in an alternate reality. You want to try it now, Sean?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, now. Okay, you're
I
good.
don't know what's going on. Hey, what's going on?
What's up? So I was explaining my anxiety attack because of the show, because of the comments in the show, and looking at the comments, it seemed like um, there were more negative comments than positive comments. And then if you're not used to that, you can start to believe all of the negative comments. And my sister was like, "Come on, Ty, like you have a business, you have this, you have that." But then, like in my mind, I'm starting to think about all of these situations to where I feel like there's people that were, I feel like there were people that were being my protectors, you know? Um, yeah, I don't want to think about it
Like,
because
what
I'll
do you
go
mean? Like,
back.
what type of
So
people?
like I have a friend, right? Craig. It's almost like the movie Big, right? Craig, really good looking guy, but he has a younger brother, Brandon. And Brandon comes on. I mean, when Brandon's around, we treat Brandon, normally, but sometimes I don't know if he knows, what the real is or what the perception is. But then there'll be times where he'll be like, "Yeah, I'm going home," you know? And uh I don't know, sometimes I felt like I had people that were protecting me and putting me in situations to where I don't know. I don't want to get too deep. We do have another guest, everyone. Miss Sabrina Soul on. What's going on, Sabrina?
What's going on? What's
What's
going on,
up?
Ty? Hey, Sean.
Hey, what's going on,
What's
Sabrina?
up?
Nothing.
So, yeah.
I don't have long, but I just
Okay.
want to come on real quick and just say how proud I am
Hmm.
of you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm really proud of you. And I know I was asking questions in the comments about you
Uh-huh.
in the show because I know you from the show and
Hmm.
with you having PTSD and bringing it up on the show and kind of experiencing it on the show, like I know it was a lot for you and I really
Hmm.
don't think people really understand exactly like what you had to go through, what you went through, from being on the show. And I know a lot of people are connected with you and I and Sean from being
Hmm.
on the show. So that's why I wanted to come up because I feel like absolutely you can talk about PTSD all day long, but the
Uh-huh.
connection is ready to love. And I know
Uh-huh.
they want to, and this is your platform and
Uh-huh.
you're talking about it today. And I really think and I would want you to really explain your experience in dealing with PTSD while you were on the show because it's was a lot for you and I think
Yeah.
you should really talk to people about that and the experience that you had with it while being on the show. Like, I'm in the comments and I'm looking at you and I'm listening to you and I'm having all these questions that come up
Uh-huh.
in my head that I want to ask you in the comments. I was like, no, I'm just going to go ahead and just
Sure.
hop on real quick, in the middle of
Sure.
cooking dinner and everything. I'm sorry,
No,
Sean.
it's all good. We got some time.
Yeah, I'm not
Um,
you on long, but yeah, definitely. Like, I want you to talk about that. Like, I want you to talk about the experience. I want you to talk about like the dating that you went through, and like, how did you feel when you first mentioned that you had PTSD? When you were on the show, like, how did it make you feel? Were you like, you know what, I'm glad I said that, or were you like, I shouldn't have said that?
no, I never doubted it. It was my very first date. Um, it was something that I had explained to Zadia. It seemed as though she was really receptive of it.
Hmm.
And it was one of those moments to where, because she was receptive, I
Hmm.
felt like the dates moving forward were going to be positive as well. But it was also a time in my life where I'm doing the show, we're trying to do the taping, but I know that my daughter is about to leave and move to another country for the
Hmm.
first time in my life. So that was one of the things that was making me anxious. So whenever I'm on set and we're wasting time, I'm like, this is time that I'm losing out being
Yeah.
with my daughter. I
Yeah.
had also conquered some childhood traumas at that time with my biological father, things, you know, with my mom. And it was the culmination. What everyone saw on TV was the culmination of all of those things coming out on camera to where I'm feeling like I've addressed it all,
Hmm.
but I wasn't um, as confident and as aware. And even though I did go through it, I didn't think I had a solid foundation of healing like
Mm.
I do now,
Mm.
like it was all coming out. And because it all was already out, it was me processing it all, but
Mhm.
still trying to date all of these people. And all of those things individually is fine. But when
Mhm.
you put it all together and then they put a camera in your face,
Mhm.
it's not the same. Even the situations of being anxious about dates and
Mhm.
not knowing who's going to be there and the crowds and not knowing what people are going to do or going to say or react,
Mhm.
you know, it was a lot. I wouldn't change anything though. It was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Sean,
Did
did you
y'all?
have
Yeah, I was
or
going to say that. I was going to ask, did y'all have anything similar go on?
No, for me, not so much. I mean, I think I don't have PTSD, so it's a little different. But I think as a man, I'll tell you what I'm going through right now. Not during the show, but like right now, I think I'm going through a midlife crisis. I think I'm entering the throes of a midlife crisis, and it's a different variation of the tried and true midlife crisis, but it is a midlife crisis. I was dating somebody off and on. She was younger than me. I'm like, I feel old being with you, and it wasn't like she was super young or whatever. But I was thinking about that. I was thinking about not having children. I was thinking about all those other pieces that come into play when you don't have children, houses, things like that. So for me, coming out of the show, um, it was a little bit different because I had my family, and my family was not, everything's like kind of cool with my family. With country folk, it's like, oh, Sean's on TV. That's basically what they were thinking, and that everybody else was crazy, and a bunch of other country Georgia idioms, and that sort of made me feel, cool. It's just my life now that we can sort of get into, but on the show, I was pretty fine with the show. I mean, I think when you do things for yourself in life, like, and you too, Ty, but I have not had anything diagnosed, and maybe you as well, Sabrina. But when you sort of hustle and do your own thing, uh, I sort of was wearing that as my armor. Like, okay, I
Mhm.
could give two shits about what everybody else think about me.
Mhm.
And as an old newspaper columnist and reporter, I learned to not read the comments
Mm-hmm.
because I remember writing a poem way back in college, even back in my old college days. Like, you could get props from every person. 999 people could write a letter saying, hey, you're great, you're cool. And that one letter, you will think about that shit forever, like an obsessed chef. And do not read the comments. Now, if people engage you face to face and talk to you, that's different than folks who may as well be Russian bots. They may be real people, but they're watching us for fodder. They're not watching us because they know us. And I think because they address us often because of our first names or how we're presented. You know, they don't give our last names out. We're presented by our first names. Often it could make it more of a tender situation. Like, yeah, Ty, I think such and such. And you read that. Like, damn, that gets personal. Yeah, Sabrina, I think blah, blah, blah. Damn, this person coming for me. Yeah, Sean. Well, Sean doesn't read much of that. What Sean did feel was everything in the moment. And everything in the moment, I expressed myself in the moment. But like, even now, like, I don't, you know, there's some people who come up and approach me about X, Y, and Z about the show. And I'll engage them because I have no problem with engaging them. But I also let them know that their perspective is way different from my perspective. And that, because you're watching it from a time compressed situation. You're watching it from whatever. With me, it's like, my mom is like, all right, you did that, what's next? My sisters and brothers are like, all right, that's cool, what's next? As opposed to, damn, you should have done such and such at the pool party. Or you shouldn't have. That's fodder for other people. But for people who know us, we got to sort of latch on to that. That's why it was important when your sister Alicia says, come on, Ty, you know, or Sabrina says, hey, I'm proud of you for your journey. That's great because everyone else doesn't know us. Now, we've garnered a following now. We get to know some of the people who've talked to us and followed us since our travails 2 years ago. But long and short of it, what I'm going through now is because I'm a 46-year-old man, and I'm trying to chart my life in more than teaspoons. So that's what I'm going through. So it's a little bit different from the show. But during the show, I was like, as a newspaper reporter and a columnist, I'm going to have my opinion out there. And that's the thing about us. We put ourselves out there. And for whatever people want to say, we're either villains or we're good people or whatever, we put ourselves out there. They did not. And they think they know us or they can own us. But like I always said before and after the show, Sean Durham is not a character for television. Sean Durham is who I am. And you have to just sort of remember that. And that's what I remembered. So if anybody's going through any type of fame or spotlight or 15 minutes or what have you, just remember, people will say whatever they want because you put yourself out there. And that's their right. But that doesn't mean they know you, and it doesn't diminish your worth, and it certainly shouldn't affect your growth unless they personally engage you as a person. And so that was my takeaway from my experience 2 years ago. I had a woman, real quick, I had a couple of women, like every time I sell my dips and spices on the road, there's always some women who will walk and then they'll look back. And my niece is like, Uncle Sean, they're looking at you again, because she works with me. And we'll have a conversation, we'll have a chat, and it's funny, it's fine, but you know, it's Black famous, you know, that's just the nature of the game. Maybe because I've also been on commercials and stuff that I don't try not to wear it so much.
Mm-hmm. Have you had an on-screen performance that you weren't too fond of that makes you think back like, man, I hope they don't show that again because it's not one of my favorites?
I actually wish I'd done more of certain things, because people who know me are like, all right, you seem like you wanted to button up. And I did, because as a Black man on TV, you're still on TV. It could be reality, it could be a real situation. But if you act the way you normally would act, that could be relooped and really make a demonic thing. So I was more looking back, it's like, you know, I could have actually gone another couple of levels. But the long and short of it, no, my time was my time. And I'm cool with that. Yeah.
Sabrina, you have any moments to where like the comments and stuff really affected you negatively?
I think that anytime, just for example, like I recently did a live on YouTube, and I spoke about a situation with a couple, and I spoke my opinion, and I spoke how I felt about that situation. And, I had a lot of people like kind of attacking me, like, Sabrina is delusional. I see why Sabrina is single and all this other crazy stuff. And people like were DMing me stuff like, girl, you don't know, like kind of like slightly attacking me. And I'm just like, yo, it's really not that serious. It's my opinion. But at one point when I, like reading the comments, because to be honest with you, a lot of times I don't even get time sometimes to read back all the comments on all of my videos, because it's a lot. But I do try to show like support to the people that support me. But I can honestly say that this, and it's so crazy because it just happened, but I can honestly say that this time with those comments, it really kind of triggered me a little bit. And I just was like, wow, because I just went on a live and I just said like my piece and my thoughts, and had my own views about it, because my views weren't their views. It was like I was wrong. I was crazy. I didn't know what I was talking about, and I'm this and I'm that. And now I see why you this and da da da. And I'm just like, really? So it bothered me. And I did my last Single Soulmates show. And I remember towards the end of that show, I made a comment, and I said on my live, and I had my panelists, and Tyrone, you were one of them, and you probably don't even remember. But I said, after this, I'm gonna take a break off of social media for a while. And I meant that. And literally, like, I'll go and I'll post my stuff, and I literally get right back off. I I post the posts that I do, and I'll go on and I may post something, but I don't want to stay on there. And of course I have to post, because at the end of the day, I am my brand and I am an influencer. So I don't want to just get lost in the sauce. So I want to still, continue to stay relevant in my position of my brand. But because of that situation is why I needed a break from social media, because it was a lot. And I kept saying, this is a lot. And just having people like kind of attack me like that. And to the point where it was so bad where I had to log off of social media for a while. And I'm still kind of logged off. The only reason why I'm even on here right now is because of you, because I'm here to support you. And as soon as I get off of this, I'm gonna cut my phone off. I've literally like, the apps, to the point where I'll take the apps off my phone, and I just need a little break, especially before the new season starts. And I didn't have these kind of experiences during the show. I had some, comments or whatever, but I can honestly say, and I've deleted and blocked a lot of people, but I can honestly say that it didn't bother me like this time did, because a lot of people attacked like why I was single. And I'm just going to put out there, and I'm going to put the exclusive on your channel, Ty. They don't have to keep saying that's why I'm single, because I'm not single anymore. Okay. And I got a good one. And I'm happy.
What's up? That's what's up. Congrats to Sabrina.
Thank you so much. It's been a long time coming. It's been 4 years, and I've waited patiently for that. For God to send to me.
Yeah. We was going to ask you before next quarter starts anyway.
Y'all always do. Y'all always do. But because I am in that great space with this amazing man that was sent from the heaven above, that's why I said too, I had to like kind of take myself off of social media, because I was like, I am in this new relationship. Like, I'm just not trying to have this negativity. And I'm like, I'm allowing myself to like fall back into the, to this mess of the show and everything. And it was triggering for me. And I was like, do I have PTSD from the show? And like, you understand what I'm saying? In this situation with this couple, is that what's why I'm triggered by it? You know what I'm trying to say? So I don't know. I mean, PTSD, it is absolutely real, and you do have to protect your peace. I protect my peace at all costs. It is very, very important. Hence why I am about to log off for a while, not until the next show starts, because I'm about to go be booed up with my boo. And my daughter, and I'm going, focus. But yeah, but other than that, I have to get ready to go.
For sure.
But I love you so much. Shout
Yeah,
out
for
to
sure.
you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, more than welcome. More than welcome.
Mhm.
Y'all have a great night, okay? I'll see you.
All right. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
All right.
You're on mute.
No, I was asking, were you on that panel? Remember we had a group conversation. It was like dealing with life as a celebrity or something as
I was not. I think you set up something.
That was on the
It
DC,
was one of the
the
first
second
ones
DC
you
one.
had on your channel
Yeah.
about celebrity and dealing with the pitfalls of that.
Uh-huh.
It's funny since we're on this vein of the conversation, and then I just sort of want to, I sort of do want to steer away from the celebrity aspect of mental health, but and talk about it just so people can relate to it. But so I go to my gym, and I've been going to my gym regular days, all that stuff. I just got back from the gym, and then one of the little young boys, 20-something-year-old dread-headed dude, say, "Hey, what's up, superstar? You do commercials, man?" Like, yeah. And now he calls me superstar every time he sees me. Little annoying, but if you can adjust, I mean, it ain't like I'm on a walk of fame or anything like that. But if you live in DC and in this market, you probably see me around, or some national commercials and some national stuff. You probably see me around, and so people will recognize you or say you look familiar or what have you. Some of that's still residual from Ready to Love. It's a popular show, and probably because of the fanfare, how they bring you on. But as a person in that regard, that's just dealing with people recognizing you while you have a moment in the sun. But when it comes to what people like you are dealing with, and what so many other people are dealing with, another variation of PTSD, because maybe they're from a hood where there's always gunshots or sirens or stuff like that. That's PTSD as well. That could trigger you. Or from violent relationships, or simply they feel blue because they don't know what's next. I think it's important that the first thing you do, like with all things, like Alcoholics Anonymous, first thing you do is tell somebody, acknowledge that you have some anxiety or something, and then try to find some people who are in your corner. Now, I don't think you should make people just be in your corner. Like you were saying, like during the show, you had some people who were looking out for you. And throughout that process, you had some folks looking out for you. That's key. And I think that's key in all things, to extrapolate that beyond being on a show. But I think it's just kind of interesting how some people deal with the attention. And I'll ask you this, though. How do you deal with the attention of not being front and center anymore? Like, it almost felt like we were still on the show when they were still in the DMV area for the second season. Ready to Love Potomac, they called it. They were still in the DMV area. But then once the cameras finally left the DC area, I know you're not in DC now, do you feel any type of letdown or postpartum to some degree after the fact? How are you dealing with that? Because I know you still roll up your sleeves a lot with the society and the chats a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you a follow-up question that was related to this.
Go ahead.
And the follow-up question was,
we can put a pin in that.
How does it affect you when you're out and you don't get recognized? Because you're doing other things aside from the show, right? I've only done the show. Yeah. Or if they're in cybersecurity, then they know who I am.
I think for me, I get more annoyed if I'm recognized for some shit I don't care about. Like some people like I'm really proud of my role on We Own the City on HBO. You know, had a full 2 minutes. Had called a kid a motherfucker, locked him up. The great Baltimore cop. You know, instead I'm getting recognized for like the cheapest, cheesiest commercial that's out, that's still in rotation right now. It's crudely cut. I'm not going to say which one it is. Some people can tell you what it is. It's crudely cut. I didn't have a particularly great time on the set. So I think I get more annoyed by stuff that that people are not finding me for the right things, for the right reasons. But for the long and short of it, I like being who I am. I like that I'm not always on Front Street. I like my life still being my own. Now, if I elevate to a B or A-list actor or a producer of some sort, and folks recognize me wherever I go, that might be another thing. But I like not being recognized. I like sort of laying in the cut, and then when I say something, or if I do something that's kind of impressive to strangers, I like them discovering me because I think I'm a glacier. You know, there's a whole mass of me beneath the surface of what you see. And I like when people find that out. So I kind of appreciate when people don't recognize me. But that's kind of my viewpoint.
Okay. The best way for me to try to explain that is, I distance myself from the group, during the show. So there were some things that the group was doing that I wasn't a part of. And that was by design. I was also in multiple relationships, like one during our season, sort of, and then one afterwards. So I really wasn't like doing anything or out there like that. And when I did have the opportunity, I ended up moving away. So like there's things that are going on now that I can't attend. I would say that if I'm out and I'm by myself, I'm okay with not being recognized, right? I'm okay. When I'm out with people that are other cast members, like I'm truly happy for them. Like if I'm with them and they get recognized, I'm happy for them. I'm be like, enjoy that moment. A couple weeks ago, I was out with some of the folks. I was Andre, some folks from the Miami cast. And of course, we're here in Miami, so they were getting recognized, and I was happy for them. So like it doesn't really bother me. I have been to situations where, like, if I'm out with my brother and it's like a Latin night, and there's like a 99% chance that ain't no one gonna recognize me, then that's a little disheartening.
Hey, Tyrone,
at least give me a puncher's chance that somebody in here may have seen a brother on the show at some point.
I'm surprised that they were able to squeeze the season or so that they did out of Miami, especially with the show being largely a Black audience.
Yeah.
Because Black folks of a certain ilk, I don't know where they be at. They be out, but it's not en masse. Like, how's your move to Miami so far? How's that been?
Hold on 1 second. Let me get this stuff out before we switch topics. I just want to let everyone know that for anyone who is unaware of where they can get some resources, I'm having some resources be displayed down at the ticker on the bottom. We have the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, the National Center for PTSD, the Stay Safe Foundation, the Wounded Warrior Project. Those are all some things that you can check out. Also, I would want to say that, it is okay to not be okay. We've been going at it for almost an hour and a half right now. It's okay to not be okay. And we may have to switch this to IG or something, Sean.
I'm down with that.
Okay, yeah. So it's okay to not be okay. I want to thank you all for joining me tonight in this conversation. Sabrina came on, Sean came on, my boy Jay Brown. I mean, not Jay. Yeah, Jay Brown came on. people that have been sticking by me from the beginning. I see we got a lot of familiar names: Blondie Monique, Jay, another round. Thanks, of course, D, J Blake. You know, I appreciate you all for being there when y'all see me pop up on the screen. It's going to be a lot more Nancy Robinson, Mimi. I have not forgotten about you all. Thank you all so much. But since we're pivoting from the PTSD, I just wanted to make sure I put those closing comments out there along with some references. But we're going to move this to Instagram. Gonna do mine or yours? Yours, mine.
It's gonna be both, right?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. It'll be both.
Yeah. We'll find it. Yeah, we'll chop it up like old days. It's Tuesday.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll grab a drink too. All right.
Let's do it. See you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you all.
All right. See
You all
y'all
have a
on
great
IG.
night.